We're going to run through the Broncos 2024 schedule and hand out some premature wins and losses. But we are 30 subs away from reaching 22,000 subscribers. And by my count, that is the largest Denver Broncos YouTube channel after the Broncos YouTube channel. So go ahead and join the #1 Broncos YouTube community out there. The Broncos schedule is out. We've known the opponents for a while, but now we know the date and times. So we're going to run through the Broncos 2024 schedule and hand out premature wins and losses, despite not knowing who is playing in any of these games that are forecasted for November and December and into January. It's still a tradition unlike any other. Sports fans take the schedule the day it's released, go all the way down and go, yep, we're going 17-0. Now, I do want to add one quick thing before we get to it. The Broncos' own schedule release video, I don't know why, but it just sucked. It was, Lewis Hamilton from F1. He's a part owner of the team, and it was him just doing like a Food Network promo of him eating dishes from different opponents the Broncos are playing this year. Not even all the opponents they were playing. Didn't have anything to do with the schedule whatsoever. Like at the very end, they go, by the way, here's the schedule. So I don't know if anyone else agrees or disagrees with me, but that video just sucked. Now, let's get into the schedule here. We do have the preseason schedule. They open up with a road game in Indianapolis, Sunday, August 11th. That will be our first look at Bo Nix, hopefully. And then you got the Packers and Cardinals coming up after that. Now, as for the actual schedule, we've got Seattle to open up the season on the road. Then Russell Wilson returns with the Steelers in Week 2. Buccaneers, Jets, back-to-back road games. The Raiders and Chargers. Sean Payton's return to New Orleans in Week 7. The Panthers come to town. That is Josie Jewell and Ejiro Evero's return. Week 9 through 10, that is tough. At Baltimore, at Kansas City, then play host to the Falcons, then down to Las Vegas. Week 13 brings the Brownies and the crew of ESPN for Monday Night Football. Then finally, Denver gets a week off with their bye in Week 14. And to round out the year, the final 4 games at home against Indianapolis, at the Chargers, at the Bengals, and home against the Chiefs. So, predict the Broncos record. Last year, I had Denver going 9-8. Ended up going 8-9. So, not too far off. So, maybe you'll take my word for it at the end of the video when I give you my record prediction. Speaking of last year, I feel like it's important to know how good of a grader I am and whether or not to take my word or to fade me. And last year, I was pretty close to the actual record. But when it came to game by game, not super duper close. I remember having them win the first 2 games. That didn't happen. Had them lose to the Dolphins, lose to the Bears. So you can see there's a lot more red than green at this point here. The weird part is the last 8 games of the season, I basically went over, which I know I'm not doing a great job of selling myself, but I feel like if a host or a podcaster or YouTube host or whatever does an annual segment like record prediction, they should be man enough to share what they did last year before telling everyone what they think they're going to do this year. So with that being said, Week 1 at Seattle, I'm forecasting a loss. And I know that's the last thing you want to hear. Every team wants to start off 1-0. It's the best feeling in sports because there's nothing worse than starting off 0-1 and you feel like the season is over. But I'm going off of history. And history tells me since 2000, quarterbacks selected in the first round that start Week 1 of their rookie year are 8-16-1. So if Bo Nix is the starter in Seattle, it's not going to be easy, and I think we're going to see maybe some growing pains early on. Not going to panic, but ultimately I've got a loss served up for Week 1. Week 2, I've got to take the win here. Bounce back game against Russell Wilson and the Steelers. Everyone's going to be watching this game. Everyone's going to be talking about this game. I guess not everyone will be watching it because for some reason the NFL really botched this and didn't put this matchup on Monday Night Football, Thursday Night Football, Sunday Night Football, prime time. Instead, they kind of buried it for a 1:35 p.m. local start, but doesn't matter to me. Russell Wilson's revenge game. It'll be a get your popcorn ready type of moment. And I looked back at some of the marquee, notable quarterback versus former team games ever since Peyton Manning left Indianapolis for Denver. And you can see it's about 50-50 actually on the spot of how do those quarterbacks do when they face their former team. Watson, I think, was the most recent one with the Browns going up against the Texans with the win. Baker lost to the Browns. Russell Wilson lost to the Seahawks. Brady beat the Patriots. Stafford beat the Lions in the same game. Jared Goff lost to the Rams. Darnold beat the Jets in his first game with Carolina. And then you've got Peyton Manning losing to the Colts. So, who you got? Broncos or Steelers? I'm taking Denver. I think the Broncos beat the Pittsburgh Steelers. This is a big game for Sean Payton. Remember last year, he talked a lot of smack about Nathaniel Hackett, and ultimately Denver came up short against the Jets. Well, I wouldn't say he talked a lot of smack about Russell Wilson, but he made his emotions and feelings on Russ very clear by moving on from him despite the enormous price tag. I don't see Sean Payton losing this game. Sean Payton is definitely preparing for this game more than the Seahawks game. Week 3 and 4, I've got them beating the Bucs on the road, but losing to the Jets in a 2-game road trip. I think it's a bit unfortunate for Denver. There are 3 games this year, if I remember correctly, where when the Broncos play their opponent, the previous week the opponent played on Thursday Night Football, meaning Denver is going up against a team that has a lot of rest. And the Jets play the Patriots on Thursday Night Football week 3. So for that reason, extra rest for New York, East Coast trip for Denver, and the second half of it, I'll take the loss for the Broncos. Now, if you want some Broncos watch parties this fall, hit the sub button down below. The more subscribers we get, the more studio space that we can get, and that means more watch parties. So please consider subscribing. That way we can do more watch parties throughout the 2024 season. Week 5, I've got Denver taking down the Raiders. I talk so much shit every single year to our Raiders host, and every single year my mouth writes checks that it can't cash. Last time Denver beat the Las Vegas Raiders, they weren't even the Las Vegas Raiders. They were the Oakland Raiders. Week 17, 2019. It has to end this year. That's that. I'm just speaking it into existence. Let's fast forward. Week 6, I've got them losing to the Chargers, but bouncing back and beating the Saints in Week 7. I feel like Harbaugh in this first game against Denver, the physicality will be very, very present, but I think ultimately Sean Payton's going to make sure he's ready for his Super Bowl. So if that means overlooking the Chargers, I could see Sean Payton maybe doing that underneath the rug. But this will be a very fun game. Broncos Saints, Thursday Night Football, Payton's return to New Orleans. And ultimately, I think Sean Payton walks away with a smile on his face. I'm just not a big believer in the Saints this year. I feel like they've been treading water at that near 500 mark for a few years. And at some point, you're just going to tire yourself out, and it's all going to either go downhill or way uphill. I don't think it's uphill. So for that reason, give me the Broncos in a win on Thursday night. So week 8, after beating the Saints, I've got them taking down the Panthers at home. Panthers-Broncos, outside of the Super Bowl, is just not a matchup your brain ever thinks of. That's not a game that you go oh, of course I remember these two teams clashing all the time. So it's a weird matchup in the regular season. I'll take the home team. Give me the Broncos. Week 9 and 10, I've got them losing to the Ravens and Chiefs. Not ideal, I know that, but ultimately, this right here is an absolute brutal stretch for Denver. And if the Broncos could split these two games, that would feel like going 2-0 in this stretch. You're playing the AFC Championship finalists in back-to-back weeks, both on the road. Not ideal. Okay, moving on here. Weeks 11 through 13. I got them taking down the Falcons at home, bouncing back from 2 losses on the road. Then losing to the Raiders, splitting the season series. And week 13, the Browns come to town, Monday Night Football. I'll take Denver at home against Cleveland. Week 14, they've got a bye. And then week 15, I got them taking down the Colts, taking down the Chargers, splitting that series as well, but ultimately losing their last 2 games of the season, which may have it will have major playoff ramifications if everything goes the way I predicted. And that means the Broncos will end the season 9-8, which is what I predicted them to do last year. And had they won week 18 in Las Vegas, they would have gone 9-8. Not the way I would have forecasted it, but ultimately kind of getting to the exact same spot that we thought at the beginning of the season. So I've got the Broncos going 9-8. Give me your record predictions down below in the comments section. That will do it for us on today's show. Thank you so much for tuning in. Really appreciate it. I know that the comment section is going to be an absolute cesspool because if you ever predict your team to lose one game, you are public enemy number one.